Ah, come on. Good evening, everyone, on this beautiful September 6, 2023. Today I have Aury, who is the writer of a beautiful book titled My Heart is Out for Blood. Aury lives and writes in North Quabbin region of Massachusetts. She writes beautifully dark and devastating poetry that invokes the raw, the honest, and the beautifully tragic. When not busy creating, Aury enjoys immersing herself in poetry, graphic design, art, mental health advocacy, thriller, horror novels, movies, and music, especially lyrics. She also happens to be owned by two spoiled cats, as I do myself happen to be kind of ruled by two cats themselves. Thank you, Aury, so much for joining us tonight. Could you
Thank
tell us
you.
a little bit about your book?
Well, my book is there's 7 sections to my book. Um each one is different. There's and this is not the order that it's in because we have to leave some surprise, right?
Yes.
But there's a section about family. There's a section about love. There's a section about nature, death, trauma, mental health. And there's a section about horror, which I refer to the horror section about as nightmares.
Yeah.
Um, and they're actually divided by pictures that kind of, I didn't use words to separate the sections. Instead, I used pictures, kind of as dividers to sum up basically what the sections were about. Um, and, each one of those sections has a piece of my heart in it. And the book overall is about life. Um, you know, all 7 of those sections um is I put the book together. It's a journey of pain and healing, love, and um, you know, I I really worked hard to put it together as far as the order of things. Um, and I I really hope that people can get something from it. Um, yeah, that's basically what it is.
Well, what comes first for you creatively? Do the pictures come first or do the poems when you're outlining your book?
That that is a very good question. Every once in a while, um, every once in a while, the pictures come first. There's actually a name for that type of poetry, and it's escaping my brain right now, which is unfortunate because I love this type of poetry. Oh gosh, what is it? Um, oh crap. Well, anyways, there's a type of poetry that is inspired by art and photography. Um, and I do that quite often. There's several poems that I have done that with. Um, and but as far as the book goes, and that's why this is such an interesting question. because when I put this book together, I am actually originally, when I first started putting my work out there, like online regularly, I put together like presentations. They were graphics, like basically a picture that I made, and the poem and the whole thing would be a piece of art. And these presentations, I would make one for every poem that I would put out. And so when I put the book together, I had already created art for all of the poems, pretty much. It was already complete. However, previous to finding out about being able to put this collection together, I had started dabbling in AI art, and I had become pretty good at it. So I decided I was going to make the entire 60 poems of my book. I was going to make a piece of art for every poem in my book. And I have to tell you, that was the hardest part of putting my book together, was creating the art for my poems after they were written, out of nothing.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you know anything about AI art.
not a lot, I have to be honest. There's not much there.
Yeah, but yeah, it's well, it was difficult. Let's just say that. It was very difficult to manipulate. And I tried very hard to get what I wanted out of the art. So that, because when you're writing your own poetry, excuse me, when you're writing your own poetry, obviously you're putting art with it. That's kind of that's tricky business. You know what I mean? It's tricky business.
Yes.
Because you're now putting thoughts and constraints on the reader. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And because now you're saying to the reader, that's what this looks like. You're not using your imagination anymore, reader. That's what this looks like, and I'm telling you that's what this looks like. So it was very difficult to make the art, and for it to come out exactly the way I wanted it to. There's several pieces in that book that I just are above and beyond what I wanted. Like Reckoning is one of my favorites, all-time favorites. Yes. And that is a picture of my version of Mother Nature. And I just love that one. There's others. But yeah, 60 poems, 60 pieces of art. It was a challenge to redo all of the art for all the poetry.
And though, a lot of times when I saw that piece of artwork and then I read your poem afterwards, they coincided so well, because the image that you had, the bleeding heart, or just the vines around one of the women, and she was kind of green, and she had that beautiful outfit on. Like everything went exactly with the way the poem was supposed to be. The blood running down her chin. It was like for each one, I felt it really coincided well with what you had written.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, because I really worked so hard at it. And you know what? It was really hard, especially for the mental health section and the trauma section, um, getting art for that, because how do you put mental health and trauma in pictures?
But you
Do you
did
know what I
though.
mean?
I mean,
I did,
like the woman
but
lying in the bed and not being able to move, like you could see, you know,
yeah.
and the one I think where everything was exploding around her and she was kind of just sitting there, kind of curled up. That was another one. Like the imagery was great.
Yeah, it was hard though, because not only did I have to really try to encapsulate the poetry, but I needed to meet myself there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I had to say, you know what? Um, if you're gonna do this, you need to do this. You need to be real about it,
Yeah.
about what this is. There's no flowers and pretty stuff for this. You can't just hide behind some weird piece of art. This has to be ugly,
Yeah.
because that's what it is, because some things are ugly. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, because there is serious beauty and strength behind sharing the ugliness, I
Yeah.
feel. So,
And it's good that you say that because I feel like we do need to share that because not everything, is ice cream sundaes and days at the beach and, stroll through the park, holding your dad's hand or something. It's like there's
right.
a lot of stuff that goes on in the world. And if you're around people that only see what's in their backyard, they never know. And then you tend to be like them. You never know what's going on in the world. And there is a lot of suffering. And I think writing, and bringing that out and making people aware of that, even if it makes them uncomfortable, it's very necessary.
Right. I totally, yeah. I actually frequent the X platform quite a bit.
Yeah.
And they I don't know if I should have said that. But there's a thing on there called Spaces. It's like an audio chat platform kind of thing. And you can basically have like events. And I have held events where basically um you I was trying to encourage people to share poetry about healing and PTSD and trauma, like their most intimate poetry. And the
Yeah.
reason why I wanted to do that was because I feel that by sharing it, you're asking a question of other people. You're opening up a conversation that needs to be had.
Yes.
You are opening doors to um people realizing, hey, you know what, maybe I should write, maybe I can get this out of me. And I feel like that is so important. Even if somebody doesn't become a writer or gets published, or it doesn't become a career, or whatever it is that they may be thinking, if they journal daily, if they journal once a month, whatever they plan on doing, getting it out of your head, getting it out of your heart, working through it, hearing other people that have been through it, and not feeling so alone. um I think it's priceless to be able to have those kind of interactions with people. So that is something that I have done on occasion, those kind of spaces, those audio chats, because I feel it's really important for the writing community, or just communities in general. So I've tried to bring people together doing that. Yeah.
I haven't heard of doing it that way before, but I find that to be really incredible. Because I find that when I write, I do a lot of writing about survivors, and it's kind of my way of being able to tell their story and give them a voice without saying their name. Because a lot of people haven't told their story, so they don't want someone to know that, they suffered abuse, whether it be from a family member or an uncle, or something that happened later on in life, or from something in college. They don't want people to know the mental health challenges that they have, or maybe their family, they feel, just wouldn't understand. So I feel like when you
Right.
write it and you get it out there, their story, without using their name, it gives them a little bit of power, and they say, well, gee, now I can do it. Maybe I can start
Right.
writing and doing my story.
Right.
And you haven't revealed anybody's name or anything personal. It's just telling a story that hopefully will resonate, with somebody else, and make them say, hey, I can relate to that. And then be able to
Yeah,
write that too.
exactly. Yeah.
What inspires you to write?
Oh gosh. What doesn't inspire me to write? Um, Everything inspires me to write. People, um, emotions, my past, my, you know, interactions, movies, music, um, everything inspires me to write. But I am actually, in case you haven't noticed, obsessed with heart imagery
Yeah.
and bones and blood and death, and that like whole memento mori kind of
Yes.
situation. And um it's just I think I'm okay with it. And I don't know, I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful to me.
Yeah, no, I definitely saw that connection. There definitely is that connection in your book too. And and like I said, everything ties together so well. So I thought it was beautiful. It's not,
Thank you.
I'm not an artist, so I can't draw. I draw a house, and the kids, I work with 4 and 5-year-olds, and they'll look at my art and they'll go, oh, that's a nice dinosaur. And I'm like, yep, that's what I was going for. But it's like, I admit, I have no artistic ability on that end of drawing. So I do write, but the drawing part is always hard for me. So anyone else that has that artistic ability, I'm always very floored by it. I think, that's really incredible. How do you
Yeah.
cope? How do you cope with your mental
How,
illness? Or
um, how do I cope?
yes,
Um, well, you know what? It's taken years and years. I'm actually 46 years old, and I've struggled since I was like 11. I've been I've actually been on medication since I was 11 years old. Obviously different medications because you can't stay on the same medication.
yes,
Um, and when by saying that, I'm not necessarily advocating that everyone needs to be on medication. I'm not saying that. But I am saying some people, um, and I'm speaking for myself, I feel that I need medication. I
yeah,
do not have a good time. I struggle very poorly, very badly without medication, and it's ugly and it's dangerous for me. And I also, I practice self-care. I make sure I sleep well.
Yeah.
I try to take care of myself. Sleeping is a big one. I sleep as much as I can, not not as much as I can, but I try to sleep regularly. Um, I have a severe case of FOMO, fear of missing out, so sometimes I stay awake longer than I should, unfortunately.
Me too.
But yeah. Sometimes I'm like up till 1 in the morning when I should have gone to bed at 10 or 11, but you know.
Yeah.
But besides that, self-care is so important. I have a regular therapist that I see weekly. I have a regular psych doctor that prescribes my medications. I see these people religiously. Again, that's part of self-care. Um, but all of that, that's the technical side of things.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing I do is write. I write and I connect with other like-minded people, with other people that struggle the same as me. I think it's important to be part of the community, um, to reach out to other people, to make friends if you can.
Yeah.
Um, and it's, I think some people might have trouble doing that, but it's not as hard as you might think. There are resources out there. There are, people in their profiles often speak of these things. There are tons and tons of people that make mental health a top priority. And there is there are so many people that you can reach out to, um, on pretty much a lot of platforms as far as like online and in person. Um, but I think writing for me is the main thing, because if something is on my mind, um, I definitely write about it. For example, there's one of my poems in particular, because I thought about which poems I might read for you tonight. And one of them that I would like to read is called Displaced.
Yes, definitely.
Um, and Displaced is actually um, a poem about my PTSD event, which happened in 2009. I wrote it about 2 years ago, even though, again, it happened in 2009. But I have, I still have medical issues because of the PTSD event. My PTSD event was medical in nature. Um, and I think part of the problem with PTSD is feeling like you can't express yourself to other people. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes a lot
Like,
of sense.
feeling like you've been through something and no one else can understand. No one else can understand, and you can't verbalize it because you can't expect them to be in your shoes. And you can't wrap your head around it. You can't make it go away. You can't um kind of compartmentalize it, you know. Um, so one night I was just at my computer, and I honestly, I have no idea where it came from, but I just spewed this poem out, and it was like, it literally took me 3 minutes. Now there's a lot of repetition in it, but so that kind of accounts for why it didn't take me so long, but the repetition is necessary. But I wrote it and I read it, and I lost it. I totally lost it, and I was sobbing, and I was so I felt the weight lifted off of me. I'm not saying that it made everything perfect. I'm not saying that my PTSD was gone. I'm not saying that I cured myself, but I'm saying a fragment of my PTSD was helped. I'm saying that that was a part of my healing. And I did that through writing, you know? Um, so that poem it still is extremely important to me. Um, and um, it's probably my favorite poem besides Bomb Threat, but personally, it is my favorite poem. Yeah.
Well, please, if you'd like to read it, we would love to hear it.
Okay. All right, give me a second, because
Okay.
I'm just gonna take a drink real quick. All right. Displaced. The truth is, I was never taken away from home. When the phone rang, when they pulled me away by ambulance, when I stayed in the hospital a month, when I spent 3 months in rehab, when I spent months learning my new body, when I spent years learning it again, when I started hiding. The truth is, I was never taken away from home, but home was taken away from me. When the phone rang, when they pulled me away from you, when I stayed at your hospital for a month, when I spent 3 months at your rehab, when I spent months learning to be without you, when I spent years learning it again, when I started hiding. The truth is, I was never taken away from my home. You just died.
Yeah, that was a beautiful poem. It was very powerful. And can I ask you, if you don't mind, if there was someone in particular besides like your experience that you were writing about?
That was actually about my death.
So now, did you had with your death, I guess this, how can I say it? Had you overdosed at any point in time? And then
No, it wasn't
no,
an overdose. It was
like a,
I had a um infection from diverticulitis,
oh, okay.
and they figured it out very late, and they told me they were sending an ambulance to my house because I was dying. And that was the last time I saw my apartment for 4 months
Wow.
because I spent a year, I mean, I'm sorry, I spent a month in the hospital after during the surgery, which was an emergency partial colectomy.
Okay.
And then I spent 3 months in rehab. So the poem actually is about dying, because I completely went from one person to another person when I was in there. Um, it was very rough. Um, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
Not that I have worst enemies, but um, yeah, it was rough. But life happens.
Makes us stronger,
Yeah,
I think, in some ways, but I'm so
yeah.
sorry you had to go through that.
Well, medical stuff happens. Not much you can do about it. Thank you, though.
Um, Question for you, getting back to some of your writing. When you're writing about some of your difficult topics, do you find it opens any old wounds?
Yeah, but I kind of that's kind of what the trauma section was about. Um, was more so about my PTSD. I wanted to include that because I believe in being vulnerable with your writing. Um, I believe in opening up because I hope to inspire other people to open up. Because I think the best writing is really naked writing, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, because who wants to read something that is bullshit? Excuse my French, you know?
Yeah. No, I understand that too, and I feel it's, very important when you're writing to be as real as possible. Because
Right,
if there is some part of that that's not real, people know that and then they're automatically turned off. And you want
right,
them,
right,
to be able
exactly.
to read your poem, for it to resonate with them, or at least for them to make a connection in some way, and you want to draw people in and not turn them away.
Right, right. I agree.
How do you determine your own inner demons versus reality?
How do I determine? Not sure what you mean by that.
Like, that, like, I'm assuming, well, I know the difference, but like at times when you're struggling with that, like, how do you know, like, when there's maybe, you're going through your PTSD or a crisis mode or something, how do you, like, in your head know, okay, this is just like my inner demons that are kind of feeding my head and telling me things, versus, all right, this is not really happening and the reality is this.
Oh, well, you know what? I like to play with that. I like to play with that, and then there's actually a line, there's a line, I think it's a Stephen King quote, that the line between imaginary and do you know which quote I'm talking about?
I do, I can't think of it at the moment, but yes, I am familiar with it. There's like a fine line between imaginary and I can't think of the other parts of
Yeah,
it.
me neither, but I can't think of it either, but I like to play with it a lot. And I think you can see it in my work.
Yes,
I think that's what prompted the question.
yes. Well, yeah. How can someone who is overwhelmed with emotions turn them into something productive?
Um, Overwhelmed with emotions, turn them into something productive. Well, I think imagination helps. I think hard work helps. Um, I think drive helps,
Yeah.
and um I guess it really depends on what the person wants. As far as writing goes, drive definitely helps. Um, believing in yourself. I before was like fully out as far as putting my work out there on a regular basis. I had gotten a few what do you call it? Um the word is escaping me. Um for classes, I took some classes and I got basically I got free admission. I forgot the word, what it was. Scholarships.
Scott, okay.
Scholarships. I got scholarships. I got like 3 different poetry scholarships um for different courses and classes. And I did them, and I'll be totally honest, I felt like I didn't fit in a lot of the places. Um I do not have a like traditional poetry writing background at all. Everything that I do is pretty much self-taught and, research.
Yeah.
If I decided to research and experimentation, pretty much. And, whether that shows or not, I don't know, probably. Um, but I my main thing is to go with what I feel it what feels right to me. What I think sounds good when I read it out loud when I'm writing it. Um, so I think I veered off from your question.
No, but I understand. No, because that does help, because that explains, how you've turned your things into something productive, and to do it your way and not be so focused on, copying everybody else and doing it their way. Because if that doesn't fit your style, it's going to inhibit your writing. So you have to go with your heart and do
Yeah,
what you feel is
I
right for
definitely
you.
want to touch on that. I think people need to be more themselves. I think because people are, I know people that have written books and they're trying to be like other poets that are really popular, and they're writing work that is similar to poets that are super popular or selling out books, and that's fine. Everybody's gonna do what they want to do, and I'm not gonna judge. But for me, I just want to do me. I just want
Yeah.
to do what makes me happy and what I think is reflects my artistry. Um, what I think is beautiful or haunting or um what makes my little heart happy
Yes.
and what I think my readers would like.
And that is, very important too, because I do find for myself, and there are people that I know who, they set themselves a goal of, like Alyssa, like 10 things that they're going to do, and writing being one of those things within the 10. And then as they're going along, it's like emotions, things come up, work, whatever, and they get maybe nothing done of the 10, but they start working on other things. And then they're like, they cease to produce anything because now they're so, well, I didn't
Yeah.
get 10 things done on my list and I only did this. And so instead of adding, as I read somewhere recently, that, you know, even if you do nothing on your list, but you do 5 things or something else, write that on your list and check those off as if it was part of your list all along, to encourage yourself to, you know, not to sit there and say, well, God, I don't know what to do. And you have 3 days where you do nothing, but where you say, okay, I
Right.
did do something, and you check them off. And then you find, okay, now I feel inspired. Now I have something to write about, because you're kind of out of that. You make yourself to be, you know, more productive in a sense. You got to find a way to keep it going and to keep it flowing. I know my uncle is a screenwriter, and he says, you know, it doesn't, you know, matter when you write, just as long as you write every day, whether it be on a napkin, on a piece of paper, whatever, just to try and get in the habit of writing. And the thing he says that people always want to read is when you write about yourself or about your family, because people always want to know what's going on with you and what's going on with your family and what have you experienced. And so they can live through that. So writing about that, you know, people become very interested. So I've been trying to kind of,
Right.
you know, I'm not too good about writing about myself, but I do try and at least admit somewhere to write something.
Well, you know, a trick that I use, and I don't know if this would be helpful to you or not, but I feel like every writer does this to an extent. But as you know, pretty much everything we write has a little bit of ourselves in it,
Yeah.
right? Okay. But when writing poetry, you can, especially if you're telling like a story or you know, a she, he, they, I type poem, you can tell stories about yourself. It doesn't have to be exactly about you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to even be a me, my, I situation. It doesn't have to be completely the truth. It could be something very important about you combined with fiction. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, kind of like planting a seed in amongst, you know, already bloomed flowers, you know, and then, and you know it, and that's what's important, you know,
Yes.
and I can like point out things about like, oh, that particular part is about me. You know what I mean?
What do you,
So yeah, I do that a lot.
no, but that's a great suggestion. And, you know, and I think it definitely would help other writers too, to know that if they're not sure how to write something that's totally about themselves, be able to plant a little seed in amongst other things that will, you know, all grow together. And I feel turn into something beautiful.
Yes.
What do you feel are the most damaging words people say to someone who's struggling with mental illness?
The most damaging words. Oh gosh. Things like, oh, tomorrow will be better, or you'll get over this, or um get over it, or things like that, or um you know, there's so many. There's a lot. And I can't think of every single one right now. But I feel like um there's levels of disrespect when it comes to people that suffer with mental illness. Because you have to understand that people everywhere pretty much struggle with mental illness in one way or another.
Yes,
Pretty much.
yeah,
You know, all the addicts out there, all the alcoholics out there, all the, you know, people with anxiety, people with depression, people with worse off mental illnesses. Um, you know, all of this is rooted in, you know, mental illness, and trauma-based situations. Um, and I think there's not a lot of, I mean, it's getting better, no doubt. But I think, you know, like the way, um, I hate to even bring this up, but um, like the way police react to certain people,
yes,
like, do you know what I mean?
yes, no, I understand.
Um, there needs to be a lot of education, I think. There needs to be a lot of education. And I think there needs to be a lot more humanity, you know, like as far as like treating people as people and really understanding that there's reasons behind why people are the way they are. You know, that everyone has a story, everyone has a background, and you know, what you see is not what you get, you
Yeah,
know? And just like a cover of a book, it isn't necessarily what's inside, you know? Um, and I feel like there's still a stigma when it comes to mental illness, big time, and people joke about it. There's jokes all the time that I see online. Um, crazy this, crazy that. Um, and I think it's damaging. I think people just need to, in general, be kinder and be more, treat people one on one instead of as a whole, you know, grouping people
yes.
up, but definitely treating people one on one and as a person singularly.
And I think too, we need to, when talking to someone, we really, because I know I'm so guilty of this. When I'm talking with someone, I tend to hurry. They'll start to say something and I'm starting to hurry with my things because I'm so afraid that I'm going to forget what it is that I want to contribute. But sometimes that's not what people need. They need us to just listen and not to comment and not to fix and not to, but just to hear what they have to say. And I think when we're more open and we take that time to actually listen, we're less likely to say some of the really stupid things that people do say because they just aren't thinking and they're not really hearing what the person is telling them. So people don't always want to be
Yeah,
fixed. They just want to be heard and be able to voice and to share what it is that they're going through.
right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think that is a big component too, is that people need to be heard. People need to be heard.
Definitely. Yeah, I do agree on that. In your poem, Undone, you talk about the sickness of shape-shifting. In what ways do you feel that people tend to shape-shift?
Well, oh, and I find it so interesting you're asking me about Undone. I was actually thinking about Undone earlier. I have a good friend that loves wolves, and shout out to you. And And I undone. What are ways that I think people shapeshift? Well, I think there are people have different um faces, that's for sure. I think people definitely have different faces. And I can actually talk about that a little bit because I was super nervous about this interview. And I think I was nervous because part of me always in my head imagined I would be this like mysterious writer. But then I realized, you know what, that's not going to happen. And then I realized I poured my guts out in my book.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why? So then I'm like, why, and everybody in the writing community, in my little neck of the woods of the writing community knows everything about me. So I'm like, why are you so nervous? Just be yourself. And, it's not complicated. So, but I think a lot of people, not all people, but I think a lot of people wear different faces. I mean, some people have to, unfortunately. Some people are put into positions where they have to wear different faces. But another way of shape shifting is, again, I'm in my 40s, and I don't know about you, but I have lived several lives. And I'm not talking about reincarnation. I am talking about I have been through so much
Yeah.
that it feels like multiple lives. Like I have changed so much that I have been so many different people. And in that sense, it's definitely shape shifting. But as far as the poem Undone, I mean, I think that one is sort of self-explanatory as far as the undone part, um, but yeah, I think the shape shifting, there's so many different ways that people shape shift. Um, so
Do you find though, like at times that, like when you can see a situation coming up that may be triggering, that you find yourself kind of shifting or changing into this other person, and then before you know it, it kind of like in your poem, you realize that, wow, I just slayed that person. They're done, and I didn't mean to. Like I totally just killed them. And now you go back and I'm like, gosh, I didn't mean to do that, but because I've had friends say that about me, like, I don't know what I did to you, but we had a conversation and boy, you were really like, you're really out to get men. And I'm like, that wasn't my intent. But I thought like I was coming across as self-assured and cool and, throwing out the jokes. And they're like, I don't know what I did to you, but, and then I was like, God, and then I had to apologize because that's not really me.
I totally mean every word of it. Like as far as like my horror,
Yeah.
is that what you mean?
Yeah.
No, I mean, no. Okay, I write with intent. I write with intent. I love telling stories. I love I really love horror. And you know, and I love lessons. I love like teaching lessons. I don't even know how to explain that. It's funny because I'm actually not a mother in real life, but I have very many mothering qualities. And I have a tendency to be like, what is that? Like, not nursery rhymes, but like,
Mother Goose?
yeah, like where there's a lesson,
Yeah,
you know, like,
an Aesop's
there's always,
fable,
yeah.
if people even read those anymore.
But, there's always like a consequence. Um, and, you know, I, I just like to kind of, I like to take it there, you know? I like to push the boundaries, and um I write what I would want to read
Yeah.
a lot. I write what I would want to read.
In your poem, Release Me, and we're gonna change, just kind of shift gears a little bit. But you talk about your father's desire to escape his failing body and mind. What was that like for you?
Yep.
Because I could really 100% relate to that poem.
Okay, that was, and that actually is the only poem in the book that has a real photograph.
Huh?
That picture with the hands,
Yes.
that is a real photograph of me and my mother holding my father's
Oh,
hand. So, that's the only real photograph in that book. Um, I keep saying that book. I don't know.
but in your book,
Yes, in my book. Um, let me just, so as far as Release Me goes, um, it was, you know what, my father was ill for a while. He was in um like a nursing home type situation, like a hospital. Um, and we were visiting him, me and my mother were visiting him. This was in 2006. And we were visiting him as often as we possibly could because it was like an hour plus away. Um, so I was driving there as often as I could bring my mother and myself. And my mother was in a wheelchair at the time. My mother passed in 2015, so um, but so we went as often as we could, and you know, a lot of things unfolded with my father. Like when he came out of a coma, he had a trach, so he couldn't speak. So we and he had to kind of, he couldn't really write that well. Um, because of everything he had been through. So we had gotten a letter board so he could point at letters and tell us and speak to us that way. Um, and you know, I actually have, when he could eventually scrawl messages, um, he actually had asked me to end things for him. He didn't ask my mother, he asked me. Um, and that was really difficult for me. And I actually still have those notes. And I've considered, I've tossed around the idea of putting something together with those notes and making a collection. But then again, I'm like, why do that? You know, people don't need to see that, you know, but um but um you know, when he did pass, we actually were, my father had a DNR, but we couldn't find it. We didn't have it. the paper,
Yes,
and for some reason, it wasn't a DNR. Yeah, it was a DNR. And anyways, so they kept him alive once he went back into a coma. And eventually he ended up dying. Because all of his organs failed. He wanted to die. And that was hard. That was the part that was hard for me,
yeah,
was because I felt betrayed. Not betrayed, but I felt, you know, um, I, f- I guess betrayed is the word. But you know what? As the years have gone by, I realized that was a selfish feeling because, you know, especially since I had been through what I went through after the fact of being in the nursing home I was in that nursing home for 3 months and in the hospital for a month and away from my home for 4 months and stuck in a hospital bed with an incision, that's like huge
yes,
and being miserable. And he was going through something so much worse and actually dying. Um, you know, I realized I was being selfish, and I managed to cope with those feelings. And I guess I just, it was better. It was better that it happened the way it happened. You know, it's what he wanted.
yes,
It's what he wanted.
yes. And again, like I said, I can totally relate to that because when my dad, he had dementia, and then he had Lewy body's disease. So little by little, motor functions and things were hard for him. And at one point in time, he had a mini stroke and he was unable to swallow. So he was going for physical therapy to learn how to swallow. And then he was in a nursing home, and I would come on the weekends because I was over an hour away. And my stepmom, every time I went, she'd tell me, okay, well, your father, didn't eat too well today. So if you can get him to drink something, get him to eat the jello, do this, do that, help him out. And and I would always be like, come on, Dad, I want you to drink a little bit of water, or I want you to try and eat a little bit more. And then one day he just, wrote a note to my stepmom and he said, why are you doing this to me? He said, I want to die. Why are you forcing me to eat? And then she told me that, and I felt so guilty, like that I was always saying, come on, drink something here. Would you like some jello? Can I get you cookies? Can I, because that's not what he wanted. He just wanted to go. And, and throughout
Right.
all the things that were going on, that was the one thing that he was, very with it about and very lucid about. And he knew that he didn't want any heroics. He just wanted to go. And so,
Right.
and that's really hard, for us on our end, because we want them to be there for as long as we want them to be there, and it's hard to kind of let them go and just say, yes, okay, I understand, and I promise not to force the water and the jello and the cookies and the hospital lunches that might not be that good anyways, on you. If that's not, if your wishes, you don't want them, then I have to, as uncomfortable as I am with it, I have to accept that because this is what you want. It's not about what I want. So I
Yeah.
do understand that. If you could tell us a bit as we're wrapping up about your upcoming anthology called Lost and Found.
Lost and Found. Oh gosh. Okay. Lost and Found. Let me bring up the synopsis because I do not have it memorized. Um, Lost and Found, well, let me start off with Lost and Found is a project I that came out of darkness. I was having, this was just a couple months ago. This was like 3 or 4 months ago, maybe even less. And you remember because I know you saw the post.
Yes, I did.
So this wasn't that long ago. I was struggling, and it turns out it was actually one of the medications that I was taking was causing an issue for me, and messing up my mental health. It was screwing things up, and it caused severe depression and anxiety more than normal. It was making my symptoms really bad. And I had a suicidal moment, and I guess, you know what? I will read you the post that I posted. So recently, I battled an extremely low moment. It wasn't the first time or the last. I had a choice, and instead of self-destruction or death, I managed to choose creation. To channel my emotions instead into a project. That's when the Lost and Found anthology was born. Lost and Found is going to be an anthology of poetry and art. It will be from as many different and talented contributors from the writing and art communities as possible. This means you, everybody. So the collection will show the two sides of mental health, the raw, ugly side of mental illness, like depression and suicide ideation, and the side of mental health with self-care, treatment, community, and hope. Half of the book will be printed upside down with 2 covers. The synopsis will be inside each cover. This project has already been greenlit by my publisher. The synopsis for Lost and Found is as follows. This innovative anthology showcases diverse works of poetry and art from people all over the world who are on a personal journey of healing. These bold voices have shared their experiences in an effort to normalize their everyday struggles of mental health and provide for those still struggling a safe passage from the darkness into the light. Starting from one side of this book, readers will be taken on an odyssey of desperation, acknowledging the raw and ugly side of mental illness and how it affects us. From the other side, readers will walk a road through experiences of transformation, self-care, and hope. Lost and Found is a demonstration of what a community can achieve through combining their voices for one purpose: to express that we are not alone. This anthology is important to me, so on so many levels. I hope it will be important to you. So far, and then I just go on about how that, just word of mouth at first, it, has kind of snowballed. But information about it is on my website under projects. You just have to click the projects button. The submission deadline for the Lost and Found anthology is April 1st next year, obviously. I also have another anthology project called the 27 Club Project. And that one is about popular musicians, artists, and actors and other celebrities who died at the age of 27, which is like a phenomenon that has happened over time. But yeah, I'm very excited about both of those. Obviously I have a more of a love for the Lost and Found project. But I'm working very hard on both of them. And I can't wait to get more submissions for both projects.
Well, yes, and I will definitely be contributing to that one. I have everything set. It's just the Google Docs that I have to work on. And then once I can upload everything to that and get it to you, then we're in the clear. But
well, you got plenty of time, so no worries.
But thank you, Aury, for sharing, being so open and honest with us and sharing, your story and your poetry with others, because it really is important to get that voice out there and for other people to hear it and to know. So I thank you very much for, again, being candid, for being honest, and for your beautiful AI artwork and for your poetry. And we do look forward to Lost and Found and to hearing more from you in the future.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening.
Thanks.